You're listening to Cash and Sass. I'm Lisa Marie, your go-to gal for all things money. As the Sassy Wealth Queen and the brains behind the Sassy Wealth Coach, I'm here to take you on a thrilling ride from the financial chaos to sassy and sexy money.
Welcome back, my sassy friend, to another episode of Cash and Sass. I'm Lisa Marie, the Sassy Wealth Queen, the brains behind this podcast and the Sassy Wealth Coach. And with me today, I have Ryan Derousseau. Did I say that right?
Derousseau.
Derousseau. See, yes. I still did it wrong. Okay, Derousseau. And he specializes in working with therapists, private and group practitioners, and the self-employed, enabling them to thrive financially so that they can focus on clients. And I have to tell you, I am really excited for this because I also work with online coaches and therapists and psychologists and working with them with their as their fractional CFO and wealth coach so that they can concentrate on their clients and make a bigger impact in the world. So I fell in love the moment I read that because when we were talking prior and I saw it, I was like, ooh, okay. Because some are solo practitioners, some are group practitioners. I have one client's been with me going on 5.5 years, 6 years, I think. Oh, wow. And she's a group practitioner and I'm her fractional CFO. And it's just, I love being able to help them, right? Support them so that they're able to concentrate on the impact they can make in changing lives. So today, y'all, we're going to talk about what we always talk about, different things of conversations that deal with money, right? That's the whole point of the Candid Cashversations. And we were talking beforehand and what we were looking at and what I really would love to dive into is you made a key thing, and I want us to dive deep into this, how to turn self-employment income into wealth. Because I think so many people are going, wait, what do you mean? Because, I'm self-employed, right? I'm an entrepreneur, and that means being our own boss. And I think sometimes we end up in this rut where we end up working longer hours than we did sometimes in corporate, even though we love it, right? And so we end up on this hamster wheel, I think, and we don't really realize what we can do to make it better and turn that into wealth. So can you explain what do you mean, how to turn self-employment into wealth?
Yeah, I actually call that like hamster wheel syndrome is really what that is, in the sense that...
Speaking my language, I call it the never-ending hamster wheel.
Yeah, so really what happens is it's pretty simple, is we go from a job that pays a salary for a certain amount of time that we spend, in the day-to-day, but then we go into self-employment where we are only getting paid for the time that we're working. And we're not getting paid for the time we're not working. And so what happens is honestly, what I typically see is the first year might be a little bit of a struggle. And we're just trying to get enough clients, trying to get enough income coming in. And then the second year, it may catch on, and you might start seeing like income that's higher than you've ever seen before. But then by the second or third year, you realize you have to continue at the same pace that you're going now, because you have to keep that income at a certain level. And what's happened is that we are not investing that income into other resources and tools, whether it's long-term or short-term purposes to build wealth. So we're not constantly stuck in that rat race of, I've got to make money because I got to pay the mortgage, I got to pay the bills, I got to pay this thing just to cover my costs.
So how do you help your clients be able to see the different things that that they can do to create wealth? Because yes, you can invest in IRAs and all, but I want to go deeper than that. I'm talking about how you can invest in a team, or how you can invest in you or me or someone, where they can invest where there are things that they can do to where they're keeping more of their money and they're able to put it back where it matters most to them.
Yeah, so there's 3 ways to invest your money in America. It's investing in the markets, it's investing in business, or it's investing in real estate. There's really only 3 ways. And what I do when I'm working with clients is figuring out the best way to invest that money for whatever goals you have and personality you have. So I have solo practitioners, for instance, since we talked about that at the beginning. I have solo practitioners who never ever want an employee working under them. They want to work for themselves and only themselves for the rest of their life, and that's totally fine. So they're going to probably have to look at other ways to invest, whether it's investing in the markets or investing in real estate. And of course, they can invest in like passive income streams or something like that. But that their time is limited. Like there's only a max amount of time that they have in a day. And if your hours are spent and filled up, there's only going to be so much that you can do from that standpoint. So investing in the markets or real estate may be the option there. And that's really kind of how it works. It's really a conversation. It's like, what is your personality and what do you enjoy doing and what do you want to do? I wouldn't ignore the markets. I mean, that's I call it the best passive income stream that a self-employed person can have, because they're getting tax benefits. They're growing their wealth when they're doing absolutely nothing if they're doing it right, and that is what's going to support them in the future. And so that with that, you're going to feel more empowered to invest in other areas of your life. And both those things start to compound and build on themselves, so it's larger and larger throughout the life. But outside of that, how do you want to grow? And so how I do that is really depends on the situation. So let's take a therapist who wants to start hiring folks, a therapist or anyone who's self-employed. We'll run the numbers and say, what does it mean for you to have an employee? What are the costs involved? What's the break-even point? Because so often I would say, like, self-employed people, whether in personal life they're pessimistic or optimistic, it doesn't really matter. In their business, they're incredibly optimistic, in the sense that they get an idea and they think they take these 3 steps, 4 steps, 5 steps, 6 steps, it's gonna take off. And maybe it will, maybe it won't, but it often, I would say, more than anything, takes a little bit more time than they expect. And building in that break-even point and understanding costs until you get to that is going to be really, really important.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, and I think that's all entrepreneurs too, right? I mean,
Mhm.
I tell people all the time that owning your own business and being an entrepreneur is not for the faint of heart, because there are, it's not a straight climb up. There's these dips
Oh, yeah.
and these
Yeah.
valleys, and you have to be
Yeah.
able to
Like that.
navigate them.
Yeah.
And one moment you're up and then you're down and then you're like, oh shit, what's going on? And then next thing you know, you're up again. And, it, even me, it's been 8 years as of October 17th, this past year. And, in those 8 years, I've seen those peaks as valleys, as ups and those downs. I mean, like thousands of them.
Mhm.
And a lot of times people give up and quit. And, someone even asked me this past year, why am I still singing out? And I'm like, because I'm not having a plan B. I'm going to navigate, right?
Mhm.
And so many people are afraid to use like a business line of credit, or to help them through some of those tough times. And I remind them that there are billionaires out there that's what they do. That's how they do it. They do it strategically, though. They don't go and just max out just on willy-nilly crap. They're doing it strategically to carry their business through. And then when it hits up that up thing, everything's paid off and they're smooth sailing. It's when you don't make those strategic choices or strategic decisions that it gets you in trouble, which leads me to, how to manage those financial uncertainties of being self-employed and entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
COVID, for therapists and doctors and all those, when there was that, I don't even know what it's called. I can't remember. It affected 2 of my clients. There was some kind of ransom thing put on the payment thing for insurance payments.
Oh, yeah. No, a
And
cyber
and it
attack. Yeah, no, I know what you're
thank
talking
you. And
about.
it
Yeah.
delayed pay like all of it. It delayed payments for like 2 months,
Yeah, it
right?
did. Yep, I ran into that
And
as well with
there are
clients.
some small doctor's offices that were getting hit hard because they didn't have, I tell them, they don't have a planner, they didn't have a fractional CFO, they didn't have someone in there helping them navigate that. And my clients, they did, and we did what was necessary. It's like, look, you have your business line of credit. If we need to touch it, we're going to touch it. We're going to use it. And then when these payments get put in, right? Because they're going to eventually get done. When they get put in, they had a way of doing it, but it was slower, right? And it was
Mhm.
taking longer because, of course, they were backlogged because they had this ransomware thing going on, right? And so once we were able to do that, they saw, okay, we can navigate this. And it took a lot of stress off of them. So it's just those two examples is just proof that life happens, shit happens, right?
Mhm.
We have no control over some of those things. What we do have control over is how we can manage them, how we navigate them. And I would love to hear your thoughts and your input on some of the things that they can us as entrepreneurs can do to help uh be able to be in a better position to navigate some of those things, right? Because like you said, COVID proved that we're not going to be in control of when
Oh, yeah.
stuff happens. Life happens, and we need to be able to navigate it if we want to stay in business and be our own boss.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually, I have a prop. I don't have it with me today that I show people who come in, to my office, who are self-employed, and it's two ramps connected. One is a straight line like that, and one is a curved line like that. And when you look at it, you think if you put two balls at the top, that the one with the straight line is going to finish first because it looks like that's the case. But what happens is the forces the other one to finish first. And I think it's a really like good visual of what life is like in
Mhm.
self-employed is you can finish really well, but it's going to be like up and down and whatnot. It's just sort of navigating that, and it really hits that
Right.
home. I like it a lot. So in terms of how to protect yourself, it one is you've probably heard this before, having an emergency fund. Both I like to build it for my clients both on the personal and the business side of things, because what happens on the business impacts the personal, and what happens in the personal impacts the business. If you need a new roof and you have no money to get that through the business, you're gonna feel a lot worse about the business. You're gonna feel a lot more stressed and all that sort of thing. Meanwhile, if you're eating ramen over here and you need to invest in the business and there's no money to do it, you're not going to feel like you can do anything more on the personal side to do it. So the emergency fund is really important for both sides of the ledger, ideally. After that, like what you described is going to be dependent on the certain situation and whatnot. But when we're talking about working capital, which is really the amount of funds that you have available to pay employees and things of that nature, or products or whatever, um, and there is a hiccup to that, it's a real problem because one, if it's products, then you don't have anything to sell. And then two, if it's employees, you could be legally liable for not paying them and face fees and repercussions for that. So, yeah, having a line of credit in that case is really, really important. Not because you want to touch it, because you may have to. Like I have a client who has 26 other therapists underneath her. She's built a really sizable business, hit by the same cyber attack that you were describing, and was very concerned that she wouldn't have enough to pay her employees every 2 weeks. And she has to, because if she doesn't, then all 26 employees could go to the Department of Labor, say, hey, we're not getting paid. And now she's facing fines on top of that. So it's an absolute requirement in her case. Now, if you're a different situation where you're just at the point where it's like an idea in your head and hopes and dreams of the future, I would like to see like proof of concept before you're going out and putting like it on credit, because there you're taking a risky proposition, which is self-employment, which is entrepreneurship. It's always a risky proposition. It's one of the riskier ways we can make a living, and you can turn out ahead, but you have to realize the real amount of risk involved within it. And if you're starting that out already in the hole, that makes it much more difficult to climb and get to that hill, because you're gonna start much lower on the dip, and we don't want to that. So ideally, I want proof of concepts. I want to see something working before we're starting to take credit out on top of it, because whatever dollar you're making in the self-employment world, if you have credit, well, they're going to charge you $1.30%, 20%, 10%, whatever sort of the rate is, and so you have to realize that.
Yeah. And for my listeners, y'all have heard me say this. I do something similar, but also slightly different. I don't have what you would call, quote unquote, an emergency savings account. I have 15 different savings accounts. But that's because for me, I like to have specific money allocated to specific things. So technically, they're all quote unquote emergency, if you want to call it. I don't use that word.
Mhm.
I like in the business, I'll use rainy day savings, or, I have one client, I think she calls it must have, like a must need, or she calls it something funky, and it's hilarious. And I love the fact that she calls it that, and I can't think of the name. Um, but like for my personal, I have a vehicle savings, which is, for the things, the oil changes, the tires, the property tax. I live in South Carolina. We pay property tax on everything. So property tax on my vehicle that I have to pay every year. I figure up about an estimate of what that is, and I put money into that account, which, by the way, has saved me countless times, because I just had to put 4 new tires. I had to do 2, excuse me, about 3 months ago. Excuse me. And I had to do 2 just recently. And I drive a Suburban. I love my Suburban. And I apparently have big, huge rims, which means I have to have the more expensive tires.
Mm.
I didn't know that. Okay. I love my Suburban. So my tires are not cheap. And I know this, so I make sure there's money going in to be saved up. Meaning I can pay, depending on the tires and depending on where I can go, I can pay anywhere between $600 to $800 for 2 tires.
Yep.
Okay. That just put it in perspective. I've been lucky that my dealership, I was able to do 6, which is about the cheapest I'm going to do on those tires, and them still be good tires. And I had the money, because there was money being put up. And I had the money to pay for the property tax in September, because there was money being put up. Now, hopefully, I have time to put more money into the savings account to build it back up, because I wasn't expecting those tires so soon, right? But the point is when we do that, it's allocated for specific things. I have specific things for the house. So I have a house savings that is for house repairs. So there's things I rent, so I don't need as much, but like the washing machine and dryer is mine. There's a freezer that's mine. So I'm going to pay for those type of repairs, right? The other things, yes, I can call my landlord on. I also have a house savings because I'm wanting to buy a house. You see what I'm saying? So it's specific. So the reason why I suggest this is because a lot of my clients, if I say just emergency savings, it depends on what you depict as emergency versus what I depict as emergency. So
well, no, I mean, that's, hey, I am all for whatever budgeting
I also
sort of
have
tactic.
a fur baby one, by the way, so that when I take them to the vet, I do not have to charge that $400.
Yeah, that's a big
because
one.
I've had to take them to the emergency vet, and that is not cheap.
Yeah. The vet's a big one. What I call those are non-monthly costs, and it's actually not accounting for those are the biggest mistake in budgeting that I see all across like any one that comes through the door. Because what happens is we say, how much do you spend every month? And we'll say, 3,000, 5,000, 8,000, whatever the number
We're
is.
looking at the monthly expenses.
You're just
They're not
looking at the month.
Right. They're not
And
looking
then-
at the things they pay out yearly or the things they pay out every 6 months. They're not looking at any of that. Yep.
Yeah, there's 3 expenses that I use to highlight that. One is holidays, so gifts. We're always, oh gosh, I can't believe we spent that much on gifts. Yet it happens every single year. Vet bills is the other one. And if you pay your car insurance 2 or 3 times a year as opposed to every month, that's
Mm-hmm.
another one. You know those expenses are coming. We just don't plan for them. And then that's what derails budgets or
Yep.
derails savings or derails, kind of whatever you want to call it. Like I'm, all for it. If I have clients who do the same, they want like many different accounts for many different purposes. Hey, that
And
is
some of it
that
help,
is all good for
and
you.
right. And if you want one, and my point is if you want to do just an emergency, do just an emergency, right? If that doesn't bother you, great. For me, I find it works. I have one that says fur babies. I have one that says my girls because I have 2 girls. I put money in there for their school supplies, for this stuff. And because school supplies, if you're a parent, let me tell you, school supplies will derail you faster than, I think sometimes faster than damn car insurance. Because we know it comes up every year. We know they're going to go back to school, yet we don't think about it until it comes up. And so, what I do and what he's talking about is we make sure you take those things into account, right? I'm going to ask you, okay, are you paying for school supplies, right? Are you, you still got kids that you're paying for their clothes and their shoes, or you got little kids and they're outgrowing their clothes. Having an account just to start putting money in there so that when they need a new pair of shoes, as a mom, I understand you've got it and it doesn't derail the money plan, the money roadmap, budget, whatever you want to call it. I call it a money roadmap. I like that word. I find a lot of other people like that word so much better. Budget seems to be a 4-letter word without being 4 letters. and you know that, right, Ryan? It's like they're like, ew. I'm like, okay, look, you can call it whatever you want. It's still the same thing. And it's not restrictive. The reason why it doesn't work is exactly what you said, is because when you go and print those things offline, go online and you print those budget sheets and ask you those questions, it's not telling you how to prepare yourself for them because they're not paid monthly. Yes, it asks, but then all you do is list it, but then you don't do anything with it.
Mm-hmm.
And you may not realize how to plan for it. And that's where someone like Ryan or a fractional CFO like me or someone else comes into play, because we can actually support you and show you how to do that. And making those small tweaks, that's been a game changer for me, because I used to have a horrible relationship with money, by the way. Horrible, right? And then I changed my relationship, my mindset, my relationship. And I looked, okay, what will make managing this better? What will make it really, truly work? I know I want a money roadmap. I know it's necessary because it helps me make sure the money's going where I want it to go. And how do I make it work? And that's how I was figuring it out. I was like, oh, okay, I've got to be able to account for these things somehow, but they can't go into the monthly because they're not paid monthly. Mm-hmm. And that's where the savings accounts and making sure I'm dividing it up. What I do is when I divide up what would come out, like what I estimate, I divide it by 12 and I put that amount into the monthly budget. Mm-hmm. Go to Christmas savings, go to fur babies. I have a Christmas savings account. That's the reason why I don't go broke come Christmas with 2 kids. That's been a lifesaver in itself. I remember the year I put it on a credit card and I had to put it on a credit card. I also remember the year when I couldn't get my kids any gifts. It was right before I started my business. I was barely making ends meet. I was on food stamps. I remember that time. So mm-hmm. I wanted a better way, and I wanted to be able to show others a better way. And are you going to be able to save for all these things at one time? Maybe not. And the key is to start. Y'all, I didn't start with 15 savings. I did not start with 15 savings accounts. I promise you it would have overwhelmed me. I did not start with that. I started with 2. Well, no, 3. It was Christmas, my girls, and my vehicle. Then I added the fur babies after I took one of them to the emergency vet. I was like, ooh, I am. That's probably how a lot of them started, is like, ooh, there was all of a sudden this cost. And I was like, you know what? I need to start planning for that. And that's how it built from there. But I started with 3. I have one client, she's starting with 2. just to get her foot in. And then we're going to gradually add the others because we don't want it to overwhelm you. That's not the whole point of what me and Ryan are talking about. What we're talking about is preparing you and making sure that you don't get knocked off kilter. With your business, having an account for your yearly savings or being able to plan for those yearly savings, the yearly expenses is key because that'll knock you off your kilter too, especially if you're a group practice or a business owner and you have malpractice insurance or liability insurance that you pay once a year, right? I can't tell you how many group practice owners and business owners that I've talked to that when they go to pay that yearly, it's knocked them off of their kilter a little bit because they were like, oh crap, I didn't plan for this because it's not paid monthly, it's paid yearly. And so there's ways to plan for that so that it doesn't do that. And I think that that's literally what you're trying to say, right? Is to make sure, have something in place, however you want to do it, if it's emergency savings or if it's this, whatever, just so that you can plan for that. I have one client who has an emergency payroll and then she has a rainy day savings. The emergency payroll is so that if there's a little bit of shortage, we can actually go and touch that money to pull it in, right? If there's a shortage of revenue coming in at any point, because we all have those dips.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, on the budgeting front, like what you were saying was simplifying it is really important. Like I actually go even more simple than that because I don't want to tell people how to spend their money. Like you described your car. I drive a minivan. I do not care about cars. It gets me from point A to point B. But I have clients who care deeply about their cars and want to afford it. And so I don't want to tell them how to spend their money. Instead, I want to break it down as simple as possible so it is not a constant concern for them.
Right.
So,
right.
I do it a little differently. I can describe it if you want here. I don't want to step on your toes or anything like that.
I always want them to have different ways because there's no one perfect way. There's no one right way. The key is to find what works for you and to start. That's the whole key.
Yeah, when starting on the budgeting front, really what I want to do is help them figure out what their fixed costs are on a monthly basis. So those are the rent, mortgage, whatever, that are going to be practically the same every single month and doesn't really change.
Right.
Next, I want them to do what you described, which is figure out all those non-monthly costs. So what are you going to be facing on a yearly basis? And what you described, divide by 12, that's the monthly amount that we are putting into, non-monthly costs, whatever you want to describe. If you want to break it down into multiple ones, whatever. But non-monthly costs go there. And then the third is the flex costs, or as often referred to as variable costs. But these can be groceries. These can be entertainment. These can be going out to restaurants. All I want to be able to see from my clients is, what is that fixed cost? Are we in line? Have you put money towards the non-monthly costs? Are we in line? Do you have enough for the variable costs? Are we in line? How you spend in that group? I don't care. Like it does not matter to me as long as you're protecting those other two areas. And it's called flow-based budgeting. It's not like something I came up with or anything like that. But I just find it a little easier for getting started just because of the simplicity of it. We're looking at 3 different lines as opposed to 100 different budget lines.
Yeah. And I do. It's somewhat similar, slightly different. I make it as simple as possible. I start off exactly what you're talking about. Those fixed things, because if you don't know where your fixed expenses are going, we can't even start with anything else.
Yeah.
And the variables and the ones that are the yearly and the ones that are the ones that happen. They happen, but they don't happen consistently. Or the ones that I think you called them variable, the out to eat. Those are the ones that will kick you in the little tush, and you not realize it. I have clients I have them do what I call a deep dive, 90 days. Tell them go in there 90 days. I want you to highlight every single time you went to a restaurant. And I want you to just highlight them, highlight different categories. and then add them up, because normally what they're guesstimating they're spending average monthly on, gas, going out to eat or whatever, they're off.
Mhm.
They're normally way off.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not saying that to put anyone down. I was off. I was like extremely off, because we don't think about it. We tap our card, or some people tap their phone. I don't. I refuse. I tap my card, or I insert my card. And again, most of the time we don't think about it. And so the first time I did it, it was like, no. Okay, back up. What do we need to do to straighten
Right.
I'm not against going out to eat, and I'm not willing to be spending that much money a month. So it was raining back, and I had to have a conversation with my two girls and say, okay, this is how much we're budgeting for this, and this is how we're going to make sure we're sticking to that amount.
Mhm.
We're not going to spend this amount that we've been spending. No. And, if you want to spend $500 a month, I'm like you. Okay, as long as these other areas are taken care of and that's aligned with where you want your money to go, fine.
Yeah.
If it's aligned with your values and your goals, okay. And if it's not, which majority of the time it's not, then let's do something to course correct that.
Yeah. I mean, it's taking the unconscious spending into the conscious is really
Mhm.
what it is.
Yep.
And also what we do is we justify it and say, hey, I spend like $200 a week in restaurants. And so times 4, that's 800. But what you also don't realize is there's 4.3 weeks in a month. And what that results in is actually you're missing an entire month of spending by the end of the year. Because that would mean
Mhm.
there's this entire month that is accounted for by that 4 times whatever number. And
Yeah,
so
because there's 2 or 3 months with 5 weeks. Yeah.
it's essentially about 4.3. And so what
Hmm.
I encourage people to do when they're doing that type of math is make sure go 200 times 52 and then divide by 12, because that's the
Right.
actual monthly number.
Right.
And you won't be skipping out on an entire month in that case.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I do the same thing. And they're like, "But why?" And I'm like, "Because you're going to be missing out, I promise."
Yeah.
If you're averaging 200 a week, then you need to do it by 52 weeks and then divide by 12. And
Right.
I promise you're going to come out with a different number than the way you were doing it beforehand. And they're like, they don't believe me. They do it and they go, "Oh." I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
now
exactly.
this is what you're averaging. Are you okay with this? And if not, then let's course correct it. And it's just, again, I'm big on knowing where your money is going, knowing your numbers. That's the key. Knowledge is power. And if you don't know where your money is going, if you don't know how much you're spending where, you don't have that empowerment and that power. And knowing those numbers and doing the work to see it, that's what gives you that power back, because then you can say, okay, you know what? I don't want to do this. I want this money instead. I want, you know what, Ryan, I want to invest this much. I don't want all of this going out to eat. There's just 9 out of 10 times you have more money than you think you have. Majority of us, we're just putting it in areas that we don't realize it and we probably don't want it to go. And so the first step is knowing those numbers.
Mhm.
How do you when you have someone come to you and say, okay, I can't come to you, I'm not quite ready or at that point, is what you just said, like, is that something that you normally give them a step? Like, do you give them just one step to do, so that they can at least start, like, to get their feet wet, so to speak? Because there are a lot of people who are scared to hire a financial planner or a fractional CFO or anyone to look at their money.
Yeah. So I'm what's called a certified financial planner,
Hmm.
or CFP. What that means is I have a fiduciary duty, like that. I have to put what's best for you above me, and on top of that, I'm what's called fee only. And so that means I'm only paid by you. I'm not paid by commission from an insurance firm or a mutual fund or something like that. And because of that dynamic, if someone comes to me and I don't think they're financially ready to work with me, I have to tell them, I think you need to do some other steps first before we start working together. I want to work with you, I just don't want to be a burden to you. And
Right,
until you get to a certain level, that's what I fear I would be. And so I have certain ways when someone is in that situation to get help. One, for those in the private practice space, I have a community specifically for them that they can go and they can ask financial questions, whether it's personal or business related. And I can provide general answers. I can't provide personalized advice, but I can provide general answers to those situations there, and it's free at the time at this moment, and so anyone can sign up and get that sort of access. So that's a big one. And then the other thing that I do is I point them to resources that I've developed because you know you like our businesses are different. Like I want to be working with someone to get them investing and saving for the long term and thinking about like tax implications for certain things and whatnot. I want them to get over the budgeting hump. It's my least favorite thing to do with clients. And so I have budgeting courses that I point them to because I've developed a budgeting course because I want them to get over that. I want them to be able to have extra money so we can start investing and so we can start building that wealth because I can do a lot more for you in that situation. And so that those are the resources that I kind of guide them to at this point. If they're a private practice owner, that community. If they're not, then it's just some of my free resources that I have built online so they can start. And then, I also have like lower cost coaching available in certain situations as well.
Awesome. And you have, the biggest takeaway I want y'all to take away from this is there's more than one. I've said this thousands of times. There's more than one way to skin a cat, right? So there's more than one way to do this. There isn't a right or a wrong way.
Absolutely.
It's finding what works for you. I do I think someone asked me what concept I do, like I use, and they were like, do you use the envelope system? That's where you use the banks. I'm like, well, I kind of do that, but it's actually what I did is I took two systems, literally, okay?
Yeah.
The zero system, where you go all the way down to the zero, where every dollar is accounted for, and the envelope system, and I meshed them together and created my own. That's what I did. And it's because that's what works for me, right? That's not saying that the flow-based system or I think there's a percentage system. Oh, I can't
50,
think of what
30,
it is.
20.
Thank you.
Yep.
That percentage system or straight envelope or straight zero, that's not to say none of them are great or won't work. I looked at literally, I like this. I like how this does this. I like what it does this. Can I pull them and mash them together and it work? And it does. And a lot of my clients like it. So
yeah, so in one of my courses on budgeting, I run through all the different types. And I said, what I realized is there's 3 commonalities between all the budgeting methods. One, you have to know your fixed costs. Every single budgeting method has that. 2, in my opinion, if you're self-employed, you should be paying yourself first. And every
Amen.
budgeting system should be doing that.
Amen.
And then 3, I don't even believe zero-based budgeting is a real thing because every budgeting system
technically isn't. I make sure I have a cushion in my account so I'm not charged a fee. And like I said, I took the bases of the things that I liked. I think I've taken some of the percentage one too, and I've meshed them all together and created what works for me.
All budgeting systems should be accounting for every dollar. Right. Even if you're not using it, you should be accounting for it. So,
every single one, right.
So those were the 3 similarities. So as long as you're doing something around that works for you, you're probably you're starting off on a good track for yourself.
Absolutely.
And you're going to have to try it out. You're going to have to try it out for a couple months. If it doesn't work, then try something else.
And you tweak it.
Exactly.
I that's the thing. That's how mine started, right? Is I started with one thing, right? And then I was like, okay, this isn't totally right. And I tweaked it. And yes, I help my clients build a money roadmap. And none of our money roadmaps look the same. The shell basis in the Google Sheets, yes, starts the same. And none of them end up looking the same. None of them. I can put two of my clients side by side. I put mine. We're all different because we all have different goals, values, and desires. We all have different things. Some of us have kids. Some of us don't. Some of us have employees. Some of us don't. There's just different. The basis of it says, okay, we can utilize this. And then I work with them on, okay, how will it help you? Does it help you to have these accounts, or does it help you to have it this way? That's the goal, is we want it to work for you, not against you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. Every single one, I did a podcast on this, by the way. There's an episode on this. There's the three main types of budgets. And every single one of them, and I even stated this, I said, every single one of them, you can't do jack crap with it until you know what your fixed expenses are,
Right.
until you list them out, know the amounts and where they're going and what that total is. You can't even begin to do any of the other stuff until you have that. And that's just the one key thing. And I want you to take that away. Just start there, right? If you get overwhelmed starting to write them down, take a break, go back, and then finish it. But you need to start there. That's where you have to start. You have a gift for my listeners. Can you please tell us what that is? And we will make sure that the link is put into the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of what we're talking about is turning self-employment into wealth. That's what the goal is. And so I'll share the link with you, but the free ebook for turning self-employment income into wealth, and it talks through the three ways to invest in yourself, essentially, in order to do that.
Awesome. I'm going to even take up on it because, I'm going to end this here. I did not invest in the market at first. However, someone got me to Acorns. Mm-hmm. Y'all, that's the best blasted thing that has ever existed since, I don't know, because I'm now investing in the market, maybe not as much as I should. However, I don't go into Acorns like some people do. Like, I don't go in there and check it. I just know money's coming out. And my youngest, I have two kids, but my youngest is under 18. So she's the one that I can do for that, for the kids. Mm-hmm. And money is just consistently every single week going in that account. And I went in there, I think, a couple months ago, and I looked. There was a lot more in there than what I thought.
That's great.
Right? Because it's going into a thing, and I'm just not looking at it. I think that's the key, is when you do invest in the market, don't keep like a hawk eye on it, because it's going to fluctuate some. It's the market.
Yeah.
The key is, yes, invest where you're comfortable doing that. Have someone help you. But don't, if I kept looking at it going up and down, that crap would stress me out. So I just don't look at it. And then I go in there and I'm like, oh, wow. Okay, this is, you know what? This is growing, and this is growing good. And so, I do two parts of it. And so it's just, again, that was a way for me to start, right? It was where I was comfortable. It was a way for me to start. And then I was able to say, okay, how else can I invest? Mm-hmm. And then that's when I would reach out to someone who is certified, because again, I'm not. My advice stops right there. That is where it stops, other than I have a list of people I can refer you to who are certified financial planners. And that's because I will also have one, right? I'm not going to give advice on something that, when I took financial accounting, it gave me a headache. So if it makes my head hurt, I'm not going to do it.
We're not.
I had to have it to pass accounting and to be able to be an accountant. And I knew that becoming a certified financial planner was not what I wanted, because that financial accounting made my head hurt. So, that's my take on it anyway. And the key is, again, even in that area, start, even if it's small, but start and talk to someone who's actually certified, who can actually give you legitimate advice, and who's not, trying to say they can and they can't. Certified financial planner is the best way to go. And if you ever need a list Ryan is one, and I have a list of like 5 or 6 more that I would highly recommend as well, that I've worked with and I've also had on my podcast. One of them I'm partnering with. We're going to be doing our own YouTube show. So, there's different ways, and the key is to make a decision and start, right? I'm going to be getting the book too. So I'm going to leave you with this. Remember, just start. Don't let it overwhelm you. And in order to build wealth, one of the first things you've got to know is your numbers, because you can't invest if you don't know where your money is already going. Wow, Lisa was right. I love it. Until next time, thank you, Ryan, for being here. And until next time, remember to stay sassy. Bye.
Thanks for joining us this week on Cash and Sass. Check us out on social media and on our website at www.thesassywealthcoach.com, where you can download my free Money Story Start Guide. The website again is www.thesassywealthcoach.com. And as always, subscribe to the show to catch every new episode and leave us a review so we can continue to bring you fresh content. And remember, yes, it is possible to have sassy and sexy money. See you next week.